guys, it's Leeroy from Leeroy Gaming, where looter shooters and RPGs are kind of my jam, and long form videos are kind of my thing, for better or for worse. So you may absolutely love this if you're anything like me, and for the rest of you, I got really good timestamps below. So if you're brand new to my channel, just give you a heads up, you're probably not going to find too many 3 to 5 minute videos here, but what you are going to find is in-depth information that I think you will find very, very valuable. Today, we are specifically going to be talking about how to get best in slot loots in Outriders as quickly and as effectively as possible. Not only am I going to talk about kind of what to do specifically, but if you're somebody like schedule and kind of specific ways of doing things, I'm going to show you kind of a routine that you can utilize, especially if you're playing solo. For groups, it's possible, but other people may kind of slow you down, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But if you're somebody that kind of wants a solution where you can kind of get in a pattern and get super, super efficient the longer you maintain it, well, this is going to be the video for you. So that being said, guys, let's go ahead and jump into my video where I'm going to give you a 3-step process to getting best in slot loots as quickly as possible. So I want to start out by talking about a quick concept. We've all heard the saying, you know, time is money, but in reality, in this game, time is also best in slot gear. And to really understand what I'm talking about, we have to talk about really quickly about a concept of opportunity cost. Now, for those that don't remember economics from back in school, your opportunity cost is basically what you lose, what you could have gained with any alternative to what you have done. What this kind of means in gaming terms is, imagine you did a very specific farm or specific run, and it took you, let's say, an hour. And after an hour, you are guaranteed to get 2 legendaries. Now, that sounds pretty good in a vacuum, but let's apply opportunity cost to the scenario. So let's say there was an alternative run where you could not get two legendaries no matter what you did. So on the surface, like, oh, that's not as good. But to keep the math simple, let's say it takes 10 minutes, or rather 15 minutes. So in theory, you could run that 4 times in an hour, and you're going to run and going to get 4 legendaries in an hour. So when you compare it like that, the opportunity cost that you gave up when you ran that 1 hour long run and got those, you know, really shiny 2 legendaries was an hour of time, which using method 2, you could have turned into 4 legendaries. But if you're just thinking, well, you know, run A, just rudimentary, is equals 2 legendaries, run 1 is 1, well, you're like, oh, I obviously need to pick 2. Now, those numbers are so big and so separate that may seem really obvious. But the reality is sometimes little subtle things you do add up, and over playing the game 2, 3, 4 hours can add up where you're saving 10, 20, 30, 40% of time. And by this RNG nature of this game, you're going to get more loots. Also, remember, not all routes are equal when it comes to chances of getting a loot. So if you're comparing the most efficient outer world farm versus expeditions, the expeditions obviously have a much higher cap on the chances of dropping loot. So that's a real quick concept you want to factor in, because what I'm going to be talking about is not necessarily the quickest farm per run. I'm talking about a 3-step strategy that's going to basically net you the highest chance of getting the loot you want in an effective and a repeatable way. All right, let's talk about step 1 of the process now. So number 1, step 1 is know your focus. Basically, this game is not jack of all fields friendly. So you got to know what you're going after before you even start going after loot. Otherwise, you're going to be randomly trying to evaluate if a piece of loot is good or not and not being sure. So, for example, if you're going to be firepower based, you're going to already want to know that every piece of armor is going to want to have firepower. So if something drops and you look at it and it has max health or anomaly damage, regardless of whatever else, just disenchant it. Because right now, in that moment, you're trying to get up that piece of loot. Now, additionally, most common format of secondary loots would be to go and gather long-range damage and close-range damage. That's pretty safe for most builds. But some builds that know that they're going to be especially only close range because they focus like on shotguns, or it's a trickster that teleports really effectively to get in close range, for example, you may say, you know what, I'm going to be in close to medium range, most likely, more or often than not. So that long range damage is going to be wasted. If that's the case, then substitute it most likely with cooldown reduction. Definitely do not get skill life leech, for example. That would be the worst thing for you to get for a firepower build. Now, if you're anomaly based instead, number one, you need to make sure it has anomaly damage. So if it's firepower or max health, again, just disenchant it. The time fully evaluating gears, like, is there any chance of it? All of that, a couple seconds per loot over a whole hour is going to probably add up like to 10 minutes. It's going to waste a ton of time over long periods. So keep it simple on that front. And now, as far as the stats go, the golden rule again is outside of that first stat. If you get short range damage or close range damage, you throw it away. The other three stats options are viable. Some anomaly builds will leverage cooldown reduction, some will leverage status power more. Very common for status power to be quite important, just to let you know, because it really combos anomaly damage really, really well. And then depending on how skillful you are and how tanky your build is, you may need less or more skill life leech. So that's going to dictate it. But again, anomaly build, the second something has even one thing of close damage or long range damage, just throw it away. So that's kind of how you know at a glance, just based off stats, what to get rid of. And we'll talk about how to get rid of in just a second. Now, when it comes to mods, this gets a little bit more complex, but it's not that complex. So for something to be best in slot, it needs to meet that first criteria we just talked about, where it has either firepower or anomaly power, and then it cannot have any bad stats. Now, next, at the end of the day, meaning when the item is maxed out at an epic level, regardless of whether it starts epic, rare in blue, or the green uncommon, at the end of the day, before you do any adjustments as far as remodding, one of the two mods has to be part of your main build. Meaning you could have the perfect stat allocation, but if both of the mod slots are junk for your build, it's a dead piece, because you can only mod one, and if the other one is a throwaway, it doesn't matter how good the loot is, you lose too much by not having an optimal second mod slot for it to be worth anything. Now, the second thing to note is going to depend on what rarity of gear you have. And you may have seen videos on this already. I've even mentioned it in my long form videos, but I'm mentioning it in here because you may have not seen those long videos in their entirety. I know, but not everybody watches my hour-long videos. I'm shocked. Basically, rares and epics and greens are all very, very valuable if they have the right stats. In fact, you could argue that greens with the right stats statistically have the highest potential to be good for you. The difference is you have to put some resources into it to upgrade them, while in Epic, for example, you know right away whether it's worthwhile or not, because you can upgrade a green into a blue. And when you do that, you get one of three choices, and they're always going to be tier 1. But if you have a tier 1 mod as part of your build, and that's still rather common, believe it or not, then that could be a potential good upgrade. But even then, it's not the end of the day, because you can upgrade a blue into an epic, a purple. And so even if the first upgrade wasn't bad, it's still not a throwaway. You upgrade it again, and when you go from blue to purple, you get 3 choices to pick from. They're guaranteed to be tier 2, and then hopefully one of those is part of your build. Now, if you struck out, you literally had 6 chances for one of the mods to be useful. So there are times where you have the perfect stats, it's a green, you upgraded once, you upgraded twice, and it's junk, and now you've had to break it down. It happens. Now, blues are right in the middle, because right off the bat, you may get lucky and say, oh, sweet, that first slot is already good. Well, now you have a chance to either get an even better initial slot when you upgrade to an epic, or you at least know, okay, I definitely need that one. So no matter what I get, I'm just going to keep this. So now you're playing with, house money. And finally, epics, the second they drop, look at them. Once you have the stats, if they're good, look at those mods. Is it a mod that is for your build? If it is, keep it. If not, you're going to get rid of it. Now, once you know whether loot is good or not, you have to decide what to do with it. And there's only 2 options outside of keeping the loot. Number one is breaking it down for parts. Number two is selling it to the vendor. Now, when do you do one and when do you do the other? So, golden rule, legendaries, you never, ever, ever sell to the vendor. You always break it down. The first time you break it down, you're obviously going to get a unique tier 3 mod. The second time, and so forth, you're going to always get more in actual shards and materials than if you were to try and buy, for example, titanium with the money that you got from selling it. So it's always going to be a net loss if you sell a legendary. Now, epics are going to be a guaranteed breakdown after around 43, 44. There is a drop-off. So at 42 and less, statistically, I believe you could get a little bit more in money and then basically buy up titanium and get a slightly better ratio, but it's pretty close. Now, you're still not always going to break down epics. Seldom. More often than not, you're going to break them down because you only need so much scrap. Now, when it comes to blues, if you have enough money, you can still break them down. But when it comes to selling items for scraps, it's going to almost always be blues and below. Now, when you have your auto loot, make sure you enable pick everything up. There's zero reason not to pick everything up because it is so easy to disenchant or sell items. You're basically just leaving money on a table when, you're saying, oh, I don't want to press the H button or I think the down arrow on to controller to pick it up. I'm like, how lazy are we? This is not a game where you got to go and like hold down E every time you want to pick up a loot. So don't be lazy. Pick it all up. Now comes the big decision. Do you sell or you break something down? The biggest question you ask yourself is, do I have enough scrap to buy roughly 2 items from a vendor? The vendors that are based off scrap, that is, okay? And this is rough. Some people just run with 1 or 2, but you want that surplus because what you don't want to do is visit a vendor, find a best in slot item, and not be able to afford it. Otherwise, you're playing with fire. Once you have enough of that, go back to breaking down items. As soon as you, for example, buy an item, one of 2 items, well, then sell a little bit more to kind of get your buffer up. But for the most part, you want to default to breaking things down. Now, I want to put a caveat that once you get to right around challenge tier 10 or 11, the amount you're going to be getting drop pods. And when you first start getting drop pods and early CTs, you're going to think, oh my goodness, this is so crazy rare. But if you've seen my video about the true rarest resources, which you should check out, take a look at the description above or below and then the link popping up above. But the reality is that early on, yes, drop pods are going to be super rare. You're only going to want to basically save them for the 1 or 2 legendaries maybe you want to buy from Tiago. But for the most part, you want to kind of hoard them in case for an opportunity that comes up to get something from Tiago that's really, really rare. But again, that's unlikely to be very common. Most likely, you're going to probably save it by 1, maybe 2 of the legendaries. But once you get a higher level, you're going to start getting so much of it, it's going to be actually the primary thing you sell. And then with the money you get from selling it, you're going to buy titanium or any other material. At level 50, to give you an idea, when you clear a gold level 50, you get 74,000 of the drop pod. So for me, I have infinite resources all the time because of that. I'm capped on everything as much as I want. You're going to be that way as well, but you're not going to be there initially. So as you're building up, once you get to that point where you can start selling it, you're going to want to stop selling everything else because you need those shards. The shards from breaking out gear, blue and above, is what's going to dictate whether you in the super end game have enough materials to actually upgrade and really min-max your gear. So keep that in mind. Right around CT 11 or 12, you're probably going to sell items for the very, very last time that are not drop pods, and you're going to just disenchant them. So now to quickly recap, step 1, we identified what we're looking for and how to scan it really quickly. And in step 2, we talked about what to do with it at different times in the game. So now you need a strategy of how to basically get the resources the most effective way as possible. Now, I've had some people comment on my videos talking about efficient farming, etc., about these world farms to kind of like mass get epics, etc. Now, I'm not a big proponent or not a big fan of world farms. The reason is that even at world tier 15, the chance of getting legendaries compared to high CTs is relatively low. So unless you were going to, you're so desperate for legendaries because you're struggling, so you're doing the haunt farms where, again, doing those 10 hunts, for example, for one legendary is not really efficient. But if you're desperate and you want that, you can do it. It's just, again, not min-maxing at all. So just like that, expeditions, especially once you get into the CT 11, 12, 13, are going to be a much more consistent way of getting legendaries. And so and because legendaries and getting those special mods you need to min-max your builds are so important, I don't like giving up maybe a little speed when it comes to how many epics you can get at the cost of the amount of losses that you're going to take as far as opportunities for legendaries. Now, unfortunately, that's kind of hard to prove because if you don't get a legendary, you can't think like, oh, I would have gotten one if I was on a expedition. So, hindsight is 2020. So if we knew what we missed out on, this would be much easier. So again, first step is I personally do not recommend farming the outside world. There's also a lot more travel time. That's dead time when you want to get to a lot of the farms. Some of them are obviously refreshable really, really quick. But again, my biggest concern is the lack of legendaries overall. Now, expeditions. Again, once you get decent enough to hitting the expeditions and the higher tiers, you're going to want to focus on that, especially if you can farm it effectively. You don't want to go at such high tier where you're struggling, you're not making the gold times. You want to be able to do whatever you can get when it comes to getting your gold times. And if you can't, drop down one difficulty and then farm that and get quick and efficient with it. Once you have a run identified that you're going to do, and I always recommend just pick one. I know it's boring, but pick one expedition that you're quick and efficient with, okay? Hopefully you're clearing it in 10 to 12 minutes, as high level as you can, consistently, or faster. So that's what you're going to identify. And now that you have your expedition identified, we're going to talk about the very specific kind of chain run that I personally recommend. Okay, guys, now we're going to talk about the actual route and process. This is, again, for those of you that want to plan things out and have a strategy and repeat it and get faster, more efficient with it. This is what you're going to want to do. And the reason it's going to slow down in co-op is the fact that people, unfortunately, may linger and do stuff that's not as efficient. You can't control them. You can only control yourself. So in order to understand this process, we have to understand vendors. Vendors have two different timers. And let me show you really quick. There is a category of loot, which is basically, I call it the common loot. And that's going to be the regular offers here, and they're always on a 30-minute timer. Now, they're going to have these elite offers here, but they're going to have the on-sale item here that is an hour cooldown. Now, in addition to, and there's basically, outside of Tiago and Bailey, there's two other sellers in each town that we're going to go to. This seller here, what's important is notice this is nothing but armor. And he actually has every time 3 of each slot of items. This is very important to note. The other vendor we're going to go over to in a second is going to have the same thing, but 3 different types of weapons that are repeated. So if you're looking for very specific loot, let's say I'm trying to find gloves, this is a really efficient way to, when we're going to be going through, to check these because we jumped straight to the row, see if we have any viable options, okay? So again, regular loots on the regular vendor with this consistency of types. And then you're going to have the on-sale item that's going to be in line with the rare drops. Now, the other type of vendors are the ones that you find in every town, as well as your low-end area. And that's going to be Tiago and Bailey. So Tiago, let's take a look at him. You're almost never going to buy from him, to give you an idea. In fact, early on, before you have a ton of drop pods, and I'm talking about a ton of drop pods, The only time you're ever going to spend stuff here is if you have a best in slot item that's one of these legendaries that's preset. You're probably going to save up for it and get it as soon as you can. Never ever early game spend it on these because they're about half the cost of a legendary, but there's nothing special about them. They're the same as the epics that you find on the ground or the ones that you find in the other vendors when they do come up. So you're not getting any special privileges other than spending a ton of resources. That early game is very, very rare. And then finally, we have Bailey. And Bailey actually, even though she's like, you'd think, oh, is she special? Just like Tiago, no, she's not special at all. In fact, the biggest thing for her is that she has epics, but they're actually on a 30-minute cooldown timer. So this is the most consistent place to get epics, but you don't know. The loot type is different. So, like here you have, 2 gloves, 2 helmets, 2 boots, but 1 leg, 1 chest of that type and, different variables. So this is unpredictable, but you can buy stuff with scraps here. You can also buy all the normal materials here. Back at Tiago, you could sell those the drop pods. Okay. Now, so we at this point know what the timers are, right? So Bailey and the 2 basic merchants specific to towns are 30 minutes, and then Tiago, as well as the kind of on sale items, are going to be on a 60-minute timer. So this is what I always recommend. When I start, let's say I'm just going to log in and do my farm, I actually come here to Trenchtown, and you're going to do a quick run through of all 4 areas. So just to see if by chance they have anything you want. So you're going to hit up Bailey. You're going to hit up Tiago only if you're high-end game. Because if you're not already selling, if you don't have a surplus of the drop pods, you know what's going to be here. You're not going to buy anything from the left side because it's too expensive. And you're going to already know whether you have enough or not of the drop pods. So you can save that a little bit of time there. Okay. And then you're going to go to the normal vendors. So you have this one. You check him out. Okay. And you run across. It's a little annoying that it's like literally across the little area. But you're going to run up here and you're going to check this vendor. Okay. Again, you're going to go in really quick and process is super easy. Scan the items. If you know you're building a build around assault rifles, well, keep it. Do you have any assault rifles? Okay, not. Or you want an automatic shotgun? You see 2 of them? Check for the stats. Simple as that. If you don't see anything of the type, don't even bother and get the heck out of here. Okay. At that point, again, this is the first time you log in for the day. Before you run any other expeditions, you're gonna run over and you're gonna travel. And even though you're like running around, you're really not. It doesn't take really that long. It's about maybe like 2 minutes or so. And then you're going to go to Rift Town. This is the other area that you have the vendors. Luckily, they're much closer together. And in here, as soon as you spawn in, go straight ahead. Here's the armor vendor. And again, she has a higher chance of getting the greens, which is very helpful. Again, as I mentioned, the upgrade section. And then check out the guns if you need them. As soon as you're done, run back here. And you're going to start your first expedition. Now, as soon as I go there, I check the timers. And you can either do this in your head, or sometimes I have literally, if you're kind of OCD like me, you can start a timer on your watch or on your desktop of when that 30-minute timer is going to recycle. Even though they're 30 minutes and 60 minutes, they are synced up. So you want to know when that comes up because you're going to run an expedition. And when you run that expedition, it's going to automatically dump you to that end camp in the desert. It does not take you to where you started. Now there, you keep track of it. You do 1 run. Let's say you do 1 run every 15 minutes, which isn't that efficient, or 14 minutes. You know that you're going to do probably 2 runs. And then the mini vendor is going to be reset. So at that point, you say, okay, I'm going to run to the mini vendor. So you're going to run to Bailey, boom, leave Bailey, jump over to each of the 2 towns, check out the simple vendors. And then once you're in this vendor, you come here again, you run your expedition, run 2 more. At that point, you know your epic items have reset. So if you're in a position that you're higher level, at that point you may want to check out all the locations, including Tiago if you're high end, or if not, just know that the on sale items are going to refresh as well. So bringing it all together, your process is going to look like this. Again, you're going to log in, you're going to check your vendors, you're going to run your expedition. Once you're done with the expedition, check your inventory, do the really quick snapshot look at the gear based off the stats, just as you do on vendor loot. Either sell or break down whatever you need to really quick. Jump into that second run. Once you're done with the second one, check your time. You're likely, if you're close to having to reset, go ahead and check the vendors. If not, run maybe a third one and then check the vendors and rinse and repeat. The less downtime you have where you're just kind of like meandering around and not knowing what you're looking for and not knowing what you run, that's not a big deal. Also, if you have a run you're really good at, if you have an SSD or if you have a system that has pretty good load times, at the expedition table, they're only ever going to have 3. So if none of the ones you're fast at are there, don't settle. Literally load into it, hit escape, abandon, jump out. It'll take you right back outside to the town, and then you talk it, and it's going to give you 3 other random ones. And again, go until one of them populates that you know you're going to gold, you know it's going to be fast. Saying, oh, I'm too lazy to reset, so I'm going to run frontline, for example, and you know that's hard for you, don't always get gold on it, and it's slow for you, for example, that's not worth it. Literally, you missing gold once, that could be the difference in efficiency that you 5 times over would have saved if you had just literally gone out and reset. So don't be afraid to reset. It's a very, very good tactic. All right, guys, so there you have it. That is the second most efficient way of getting legendaries and best in slot gear. Wait, I just said second best. So what's the best? Well, clearly, it's taken advantage of Leeroy Gaming's free CT15 carries. Now, if you haven't seen me do these live yet or seen me advertise in my last video that I did or on my Twitch channel, here's the simple path of it, or the simple details. Basically, if you go to my Twitch channel and look in the panels, there's going to be a little panel that says interested in CT15 carries. Follow these instructions. Follow those instructions. Everything is there. If you follow those instructions, you can come to my stream. I'm currently streaming 4 days a week. I have 2 sessions that are good for Europeans or people that are, in the US that don't work during the day. So at 9 a.m. To 11 a.m. Pacific time, here Los Angeles time, I do carries, and on Mondays and Wednesdays, I do 8:30 p.m. till 10:30 p.m. Pacific. So for those of you that work and have lives or kids to take care of during the day, and you get your peace and quiet at night, well, that's for you. And it's very, very simple. You show up, you follow those directions, and I take people on runs. And you have 1 or 2 options. The most popular is we go and do CT15, and I do that with 1 person at a time. And it doesn't matter what your level is, because I can carry you, worst case scenario. So if you can kind of hold your own, awesome. But even if you were like level 30 and all you're going to do is fall down on your face and die, you're still going to get that CT15. You're going to get chance of legendaries and loot. Now, the second option is if you want to basically progress your tiers. So if you're like CT11, doing CT15 may not necessarily unlock your CT15. Now, it's a little weird because I've had somebody like it wasn't unlocking and all of a sudden unlocked. So I don't know the technicality, but let's say you wanted to upgrade your tier. I have the option. Luckily, I'll carry you, anything up to a CT14. I'll carry 2 people at a time. You come in, we do the run, have fun. And again, I do that every single time. If you're especially somebody that's been stuck, hitting your head on the wall, or you feel really behind because your character is still locked up from the bug that people can fly lovingly brought upon us, or you just maybe you didn't lose your loot, but maybe you're just starting out late and you're just struggling. Come on by, follow the steps, come join the farm. Would love to have you. Again, it's Twitch, and my channel name is Leeroy Gaming Stream. So I hope to see you guys there. Also, soon I'll have my Discord up. By the time you're watching this, it may be up, and you're going to be able to go there, talk to like-minded individuals. Also, do keep an eye out if I happen to be in Leeroy's AMA corner. And if you see me in there, that means I'm fair game. Come on in, talk to me, ask me questions. I may be playing a game or working on other stuff, but if I'm on that channel, that means I'm open to you guys. If you haven't noticed already, I love talking, so you can get answers to whatever you want, or just chat it up, maybe get a run together spur of the moment. All right, guys, that's everything you should know about that. Hopefully you enjoy this. You know what to do if you like this content. Like, subscribe, and if you like my style, then hit that notification bell because you're going to get tons of content like this moving forward. Leeroy from Leeroy Gaming. I'll see you guys next time.